Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me today for another Twilight Zone video in my Twilight Zone ranking series where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. Today I'm going to be talking about number 120 on the list, The Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross, written by Jerry McNeeley based on a short story by Henry Slesar, and this episode was directed by Don Siegel. So, Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross is one of those episodes that's just kind of average for me. It's mostly enjoyable, and it moves pretty well, but there's not really anything great or terrible about it, in my opinion. It's just kind of pretty decent. So, this episode's about a man named Salvadore Ross, and he's in love with a lady named Leah, but she's reluctant to marry him because she doesn't really think their personalities are compatible. So he finds that he has this unique talent and he can trade physical traits with other people. In other words, one of those Twilight Zone episodes where someone has a superpower. So the acting in this episode is pretty good. Don Gordon is solid in the lead. He's pretty unlikable, but the character's supposed to be that way and does a pretty good job. Gail Colby's also very solid in this episode. She was in 3 Twilight Zone episodes total, and I thought her performances were always strong. She kind of has a thankless role here of just being the girlfriend character who doesn't really get that much to do, but she makes the most of it, in my opinion. So, this episode does have a few notable scenes. There's a scene where Salvador exchanges a broken hand for some type of sickness with an elderly gentleman. He also makes himself old to get rich, and then he gives up money to become young again while still turning a profit. All this is executed fine, but it does feel a little repetitive, and I have to say the makeup in this episode isn't Twilight Zone's finest either, but it gets the job done. So like I said, this episode just kind of moves around at a solid pace. It is interesting, but it's not very exciting in my opinion. But the episode does do a good job of making us not really care for Salvador too much at this point. So Leah's still not impressed with this guy after all these things he's done, to try and improve himself. So he goes to Leah's father, who has never liked him. And he offers this man, I think it's like $100,000, to take the man's personality, or basically his compassion, however you want to say it. So then we get to the ending of the episode, which is predictable, but it does fit the themes of the episode. So of course now Salvador is a much nicer person because he has the father's traits. And he wants to marry Leah, but the father shoots him and Salvador's a goner. And the father says the reason is because he has no compassion anymore. So kind of a fitting end, but one complaint I do have about this episode, I never really totally bought the ending. If you had as much compassion as the father does, would you really sell it away? Would a person with compassion really do that? I don't know, others might find it to their satisfaction, but this felt like a little bit of a plot convenience to me. But the ending still kind of works if you just kind of go with it. So overall, Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross is a very watchable, pretty fast-paced episode. But I don't find anything that memorable about it. And I thought the ending was only okay, as I mentioned. So that's why Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross comes in at 120 for me on the list. As always, feel free to leave a comment on what you thought about this episode. And thank you very much for watching.